the tape popped off the reel and wound underneath the school, and we all stopped breathing, going, because in those days we didn't have what they called safety copies. We didn't have a backup. And so my mind is scrambling. Okay, so we'll get the gear back to England, we'll get a studio, we'll re-record it. So I asked Al about that. He said, I have no memory of that ever happening.
They probably stole one of his rocket ships.
And then he pointed out something that I had no memory of, where we were at a gig, I think it was outside of Detroit at Pine Knob, this shed, right? I've been there. And I guess the bus we were in started rolling backwards, almost crashing, but I have zero. So it's a real game, trying to write a book and remember all those gigs.
So is it something then that you never really imagined you'd do? Did you never thought, oh, I'm going to write this book?
No, I had no intention to do that, really. And people had suggested it to me, my lovely book agent would give me a nudge once in a while and say, man, you ready to write a memoir? But I always looked at my life as an ongoing thing, like there was still stuff I needed to do. It wasn't a finished story, and I'm way too young, of course, to write a number of things happened that changed my thinking on that, and one was the loss of Neil. When he passed away, it was very difficult. And so that was coinciding with the first lockdown we had in Canada. So the pandemic. So I was sort of locked down with these memories and this loss, and I needed to figure out how to deal with it. At the same time, my mom had been, struggling with dementia, and she was slowly descending into a kind of abyss, and she didn't remember things. She'd think she was back in the war, and she didn't recognize me every time I saw her. So all those things made me realize that what you're holding up here is precious, and it has a shelf life. And I just thought, well, maybe I should write my memories now before they disappear.
Was it, so then COVID happens, you certainly have time, you're doing all this, has it been a therapeutic exercise? Has it been, did it affect you in ways that you were maybe unprepared for? Or did you imagine, no, this is going to be an emotional experience?
I hoped it would be cathartic. I hoped I would be able to help myself deal with the loss of my good friend and bandmate. At the same time, what I learned was that when you lose someone like that, you relive every loss you've had. So going through my life and the memories of my life, I realized that there were some unresolved things about people I had lost, and most importantly, my father. I grew up in a household full of stories about World War II and the Holocaust, and my dad died when I was 12, and they call that unintended sorrow. And I realized I suffered from that to a certain degree, and I hoped that talking about those things and reliving them, I would pick up a rock and discover some wonderful thing about myself that would help me move on. And indeed, I think that's what occurred. And the other thing I realized, which was really surprising, now, you see me as this suave, debonair, well-spoken person here. But believe it or not, I kind of always saw myself as a nerd. Bit of a shy, sheepish guy, very quiet, very shy. But when I started adding up my behavior as a young person, and like I recently saw some footage of me as an 8-year-old, and my dad was taking his Bell & Howell camera, and you know, there's me, like, photobombing every person in my family, right? Making these goofy faces, and this is not the behavior of a wallflower, you know? And then when I joined, just starting music and hooking up with Alex and playing with Rush, and then there was a period I talk about in the book where they kicked me out of the band. You know? A lot of you didn't know that. And rather than, you know, sit there crying about it, I started a new band, like, almost immediately. And we were more successful than the remnants of what Rush was, oddly enough, until they finally invited me to rejoin. But that's not the behavior of a wallflower. So I think I had a false impression of my own childhood personality. I think I had more chutzpah than I ever gave myself credit for.
I love that part where you talked about getting kicked out of the band and then going to see them.
Yes.
You went back to go see them play.
I did.
The name of the band, they had renamed the band
Hadrian.
And you had a real dilemma because you had tickets to a concert that night, but then Hadrian was playing, so you blew off the concert that you were going to go watch Hadrian, which must have been an incredibly painful experience, I would think. Well, almost as painful as the concert that you missed.
Yes.
Who did you skip?
Okay. So I chose to see the band that had kicked me out instead of going to see Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
What an idiot! What an idiot! And they were really bad.
That at least
that made me feel
satisfaction.
Yeah, I felt good. I felt good. They were really lousy. But you know, I thought, well, I'll see Jimmy next time he comes, but he passed away. Anyway, we all make mistakes, Paul.
How was it? How do you process that when you're a kid and this is your dream, you love it, you get kicked out? Did you have hard feelings? And when you went back and joined, were you ever on the fence about that?
It's a good question. I really went back. When I was kicked out, obviously I was hurt. I didn't understand. They lied to me, of course, and they made the nicest guy in the band tell me. You know, it was the guy whose sister I ended up marrying many years later. And he met me in a field, and he was kicking the ground, and the rehearsals canceled because the band broke up. The band broke up. Wow, you're just telling me now the band broke up? Yeah, the band broke up. So I went home kind of going, okay, the band broke up. Couldn't get a hold of Al, couldn't get a hold of John, no confirmation, and I was sort of left on my own. So I started calling other musicians up, and I started a band. So, yeah, I was hurt, but I was, kind of angry when I found out they really just reformed, changed their name, and added another bass player who wasn't very good. But he looked really good. He looked really good. Anyway, when I got the call, we still saw each other because we had the same manager, and we were getting all these gigs, and they weren't, because they were pretty much not functional. And then one day John called me, and he basically apologized, and he said, can you come back? We really want you back. And I thought about it, and the idea of not ever playing with Alex again was not right. It was not right. I missed out, I wanted to play with Alex.
Yeah, Alex was really the goal. Did it feel strange after that? Is that
Yeah, I mean, I never really knew where Al stood on it. And I recently interviewed Al about this very question. And he looked at the ground and shuffled his feet. And he said, well, Ged, you remember what it was like, you know, I just sort of went with the flow. And so he confirmed that really it was John that wanted me out of the band. And so I kind of knew that. You know, I kind of sensed that. So anyway, I just thought, I really want to play with Al. I thought the direction of that band was where I wanted to be. So thankfully, you know, we made it work.
Yeah, sure did.